Okay, so hi and hello. So it's Erev Yontif, it's Erev Shavuos. It's a beginning of a new month. There's lots of different things to discuss, but really the topic of the moment is Shavuos and Torah and the Midbar and all of that good stuff. But let's look at Hayom Yom. And in fact, before we look at Hayom Yom, let's look at the month, because the Hayom Yom is the specifics, but the general is the month of Sivan. And there's lots of nice things about this month. So if we go through all the different things from Sefer Yetzirah that we usually do at the beginning of a month, so there's an energy specific to that month, an energy of healing, an area of healing, an astrological sign, a Hebrew letter, a Hebrew tribe, and the arrangement of Hashem's name, the Yud, the Hey, the Vav, and the other Hey. So if we just go through that, so the energy of this month is the art of receiving. And the more that I'm learning about life and trying to learn Torah and try to learn about the Sefirot, the more I'm understanding that this idea of the art of receiving is a very big thing. Because if we think about Mashiach, we think about Malchus. The idea of Mashiach is Malchus, which is the final Sefirah. All the different Sefirot kind of pour into Malchut, and Malchut is the one that is at the bottom of all of those. If you think of them like a fountain, one bowl of water pours into the next, which pours into the next, pours until you get to the final container that receives all that came above, which is Malchut. And Malchut is, in a way, the quality and the attitude and the midah that we're trying to cultivate in order to be able to go forward into this messianic age. And a lot of it is about receiving guidance from God, being able to listen, being able to tune in. So this idea of receiving is a very interesting quality. So this month, the art of receiving is something that we get to work on. And obviously the receiving the Torah is the big star of that experience. But we also receive Shabbat every week. Kabbalah Shabbat is receiving the Shabbat. And when we do hosting of guests, we receive the guests. Hachnasas Orchim is a receiving of our guests. So there's all these aspects of receiving, and it's a good thing. We'll talk about it more, but we're going to be given the Torah, but as much as Hashem is giving it to us, we have to receive it. So that's the theme of the month, receiving. The area of healing, which is a slightly different thing than the energy of the month, the area of healing, and that's usually a part of the body. There's a particular part of the body that's, I guess, a focus of the energy of that month. If you imagine the body, so each month a different body part is kind of lit up, gets a specific energy focused around it, is the subconscious mind. And if we think about the subconscious mind, and then we think about receiving the Torah and how the Torah is going to, hopefully, Torah is related to the word hora'ah, which is teaching. And whatever it is, and however we receive that Torah, hopefully we receive it and it penetrates into us, but it's also going to affect our subconscious mind. How so? Well, the Torah is going to give us lots of things we're supposed to do, and those actions are going to impact on us consciously and unconsciously. So it's interesting, the area of healing in the month in which we get the Torah is the subconscious mind. The astrological sign is Gemini, and we'll talk more about that. It's very interesting. The Hebrew letter is Zion, and the tribe is Zevulun. Great, sorry, I'm glad you got on. The tribe is Zevulun, and the letters of Hashem's name is Yud, Vav, Hey, Hey. So in the upper realms, it's concentrated. Then there's like a channel, Yud, Vav, and then in the realm of action, it's broad, and in the realm of emotion, it's broad. So we're not going to talk about that so much today. So Melinda Ribner, who's my favorite author for describing energies of the month, she's going to write the following, and I'm going to share it with you. Just as the trees and flowers begin to blossom during the spring month of Sivan, we blossom at this time as well. Sivan is a time of gaining clarity of vision, discovering one's life purpose, and receiving guidance and direction on actualizing our personal goals. So this is interesting because if we think about Shavuos as this holiday of receiving, and we think about what we receive, so we're receiving guidance, we're receiving a national treasure of us as a national group of people receiving a national treasure, but individually we also receiving guidance on how our own personal relationship to Torah is and what our contribution to the world through our learning. Because one of the things that the Torah, we can talk about it now or can talk about it later, but when we get the Torah, there's a correlation between the creation of the world and the Torah. They're both ongoing and very primary, essential constructs. The one is that God created the world and continues to create the world. And the other is God gave the Torah and continues to give the Torah. And then we receive the Torah, and then what do we do with it? How do we better the world? How do we better contribute to the world? How are we changed by what we receive? And so Sivan and Shavuos itself is a time to get this guidance. So it's Sivan in general, but a time of receiving guidance and direction on actualizing our personal goals. Sivan is a time of expressed creativity, of bringing forth and communicating what is deep inside of us as we open to the greater expansiveness possible in this month. We become aware of depths within us that we were not conscious of before. This brings greater freedom, love, and joy. And then she's going to just recap like what was happening. If you think about the last few months, if we go, and this is another very funky and interesting thing. Whenever I come onto this class and we start learning the Parsha of the week or whatever, number one, I have these sand dunes behind me, which is sort of indicating that I'm still in Sinai, right? We always still in Sinai. But there's this interesting thing because we are going along the journey right now in the here and now, echoing what they did way back then. So way back then, they left Egypt. Way back then, and that happened in Nisan, right? That's why we have Pesach in Nisan. So we began a cycle of growth and transformation in Nisan, as the Jewish people way back then did. But in spiritual terms, there's no time. There's no time, right? So we doing it now, and they did it then in Nisan. We worked on ourselves. We healed and purified ourselves in Iyar. And how did we do that? Well, supposedly, we were counting the days, each day between the second night of Pesach and tomorrow night, the 49 days. The 50th day is Shavuos. And if we were doing that right, we were sort of working on one midah after another, counting and refining ourselves. And then now we're coming into Sivan and we're going to receive the fruits of our effort. What's the fruit of our effort? The Torah, number one, and also the first fruits. That's also part of what's symbolically we're receiving the fruits of our labor. Sivan arrives in the late spring, having the planting work done in Iyar. In Sivan, we harvest our crop and enjoy the vibrancy of nature. Sivan is our time of fulfillment. We are free to explore and to travel internally and externally. She said it's a auspicious time to travel. It becomes clearer to us where we're going. We can radiate and share ourselves with others in a more direct and beautiful way. The whole month of Sivan is about receiving. Right, so we spoke about that. Many people know how to give and many more know how to take, but fewer know how to truly receive. How do you think we can make ourselves good receivers? If I asked you, what do you need to work on to be a good receiver? And do each of you think that you're a good receiver? Sorry.
I'm raising my hand.
Yes.
Imagine how the other person wants to be a giver and you want to help them out by being a receiver, even if you're not so comfortable receiving it. But if you know the other person wants to give, so you're...
Okay. That's interesting. Focus on the need of the giver, and it's almost like an act of compassion to them that you receive what they want to give. That's an interesting.
I mean, you could want it anyway, but some people be like, no, I don't need to. I'm fine. I don't need your stuff. So
Right.
if you...
Okay, I like that answer. Anyone else? Any other?
Can I just add to that? I love that. That was such a great one, Sari, which is a person who has and doesn't give is a very serious thing. Very serious. So we really are helping them do what they need to do in this world by taking, and it's a form of taking too. But I was going to say surrendering first. First, you have to surrender your power, your will.
Right, surrender. To receive, you have to surrender. Especially, one of my things that doesn't sit so well with me is, and I maybe have to work on it, but if you give somebody a present and then they don't like it and then they want to change it, or they leave it at your house and they don't even bother to take it home with them or something, and you feel like you gave them a gift, and in surrender, in that they, like my husband never wants to offer our children a chance to pick their own gifts. He's like, I'm the one giving the gift. I want to pick it, and I want them to receive the gift that I've picked out for them. And then I say to him, well, they don't all have your taste, or they have their own taste, they want to choose it themselves. But in a way, if they were surrendered, he wants to give them something. If they were surrendered to receiving without their own self in the picture, then they just receive what he wishes to give. But they say, well, we want to choose, because they're not surrendering. They kind of want to put their own self in, in the situation. So that's interesting. So
but then you can say, bracha, you know what? You can take the thing that the person's giving, and then it just sits there, which is, if it's decorative, it's fine. But if it's supposed to be used for something, I just feel bad, because that's happened to me also. I'm like, okay, they want to give it, I'll take it. And then
so,
but
Give gift cards.
they don't know that.
Yes, exactly. You're right. Give gift cards.
wait. I want to summarize so far. So Suri said you receive because you're doing a chesed to the giver, and then Susan said there's an aspect of surrender, and so in receiving we have to surrender. Any other comments about receiving? Yes, Yakova.
I know there's a teaching, I think in Kabbalah or Hasidus or something, that in the course of, I think it's in Hayom Yom actually, there's a Hayom Yom about this, that we are sent to where the sparks are that we need to elevate. So maybe that extends to things that are given to us. Maybe the things that are given to us, since Hashem's in charge of these things, We may not realize it, especially if they're not to our taste, but somehow there are sparks there that we need to elevate. And maybe even if we don't think we like them, maybe hold on to them for a while. I mean, I don't mean to get morbid, but suppose somebody that you really like gave you a gift, but you didn't like the gift so much, but chas v'shalom, something happened to that person. That gift would become so precious to us, you know?
Right.
Even if it was something we would never, like a ugly sweater we would never wear, or whatever, a duplicate of something we have 3 of already or something, you know? I don't know, just thoughts. I'm just
Sounds, it also doesn't have to be tangible. It could be like, when you just said something about the sparks, of Chassidus, so let's say you give, or well, you receive guests as you into your house, you know, and which is obviously a very big, you know, it's a very big mitzvah. That's what Abraham did, and you know, I mean, and people know my house is the house. You know, you want to come, be my guest. It doesn't matter. Tell me you're having, you know, I've got people inviting people to my house. It's very funny. It's a story, but it's just, and I feel, I mean, yes, I feel, I just, I'm happy that I could receive them, and then what's the word I'm looking for? It's just, it doesn't have to be tangible, is what I'm trying to say. It could be
right.
an act. You know what I'm getting at?
Right.
Yeah,
To me, it's like a beautiful thing. I just don't understand. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Okay.
Okay, good. Because I didn't. Okay,
Okay.
good.
I just want to put an addendum on Yaakov's thing. I don't know if the word addendum is right. This is the wrong word. But when Yaakov Avinu went back to get the little jugs, the pachim katanim, there's a Rashi there or something that the tzaddikim value all their possessions, and even little things that, you know, he forgot. He has an attachment to all of his possessions because everything that we have, we connect to. And then there's a teaching on that, I think, about sparks, that we get, you know, our possessions come to us. So because we're elevating the sparks. Okay, so there's a lot there. So many people know how to give, many more know how to take, but fewer know how to truly receive. So we're speaking a little bit about developing a capacity and our sensitivity to receive. Sivan is a time of learning how to receive on all levels of being. To truly receive is, here's it for Susan, to be open without an agenda, to be present and accept every moment gratefully as a gift. The extent to which we are open determines what and how much we will receive. Life is so abundant. There is such a flow of godly energy, particularly this month. So this is the idea of availing ourselves and, you know, receiving and all of this. So this is very nice. And then the idea of receiving and intimacy, love, unity, connection. When we came to receive the Torah, it's interesting that first of all, it says that the Yidden came and stood at Har Sinai, Ke'ish echad, belev echad, that they all came and they traveled from Rephidim and they came to the desert in Sinai, and then Israel camped. And the word for camped is a singular word, not a plural word. And then Rashi says, because they were like one person with one heart. So the covenant between, so first of all, they themselves, to receive the Torah, they themselves became a oneness, a united, cohesive group. That's one thing. And the second thing is that in them uniting and becoming a cohesive group, all of us as a people became united with God in a covenant of giving and receiving. So the Torah is an expression of love. It's a covenant between the Jewish people and Hashem. It's a covenant of love, commitment, dedication, and intimacy, like a marriage, everlasting partnership. And so this is also a good time for weddings around this month, a lot of weddings. And so, yeah. So that's all things that I wanted to say about Sivan. And it's a very nice a nice thing to work on, this capacity to receive. I think also in the Western world, and we talk about in the Tree of Life, who remembers if which sphere receiving would be connected to?
Not sure of the question.
Maybe it's a little hard, but maybe it's not. If we go through the Sphirot, at least the midas, there's Chesed is giving, Gevurah is kind of making boundaries, Tiferet is compassion, Netzach is kind of moving in your path and kind of moving ahead. Hod, we always said, is kind of what?
Ask that last part again.
Hod is the opposite of Netzach, right? So Hod, Hod is Netzach is I'm going. Okay, let me say it in a different way. In the Western world, I think we're very good at Netzach. We're very good at doing things, setting paths and going about our business. And, you know, Americans are working more and more, taking less time off. So it's a very Netzach orientated society. So the opposite of Netzach, because all the spheres, well, not all of them, but a bunch of them, there's opposite pairs, and then they integrate in the middle and come to a, like there's a left side, a right side, and an integration. So the right side is Netzach, go, go, go. The left side is Hod, stop going and receive. And then they come together in Yesod. So in a way, it's nice to set ourselves the task of concentrating a little bit more on this Hod phenomenon, this receiving, this being with, this sensitivity and conscientiousness to open ourselves to receive guidance, to receive, you know, that's what intuition is all about. That's what, you know, people say, if we want a relationship with Hashem and he's talking to us, but we're sort of running too fast, we don't hear it. We have to get a little quiet to even hear the guidance and hear the messaging and hear the, you know, the communication. So just to say a little bit more about Sivan, because I think it's helpful, and then we'll move on. The zodiac sign of Sivan is Gemini. And Gemini is an air sign, and air signs is an energy that doesn't want to be contained. The ruling planet of Sivan is Mercury, and this is just in the mythology, the Roman messenger, Mercury, the Roman messenger of the gods, who flew from the heavens to the earth, constantly going back and forth between the worlds. Similarly, the Torah, which is given in this month, is in a way our message and our messenger between heaven and earth. People born under the sign of Gemini are free-spirited and always want their consciousness to be lifted up. So that's what Torah does, right? Torah is a gift that we get in this time, lifting our consciousness up. Geminis want to leave the earth and fly to the heavens, interested in ideas or any form of mental activity. Geminis are creative, skillful communicators, and the planet of Mercury is associated with communication and intelligence. Let's see, the Torah documents travel of the Jewish people, so connection to moving from place to place, mercurial aspect, and so another connection with giving of the Torah in this time. The freedom-seeking energy of Gemini is best expressed in the Torah, which brings freedom and enables us to fly upwards. Also appropriate to this theme of Torah's Gemini symbol, the twins. Unlike most of the other months which are represented by animals, Gemini has human twins, and this symbol of the human twins, it's actually been explained by the great Kabbalist, Rabbi Tzaddik HaKohen, who said that the first 3 months of the year are associated with Avraham, that's Nisan, Yaakov, Yitzchak is Iyar, and Gevurah, Gevurah is Iyar, and Sivan is Yaakov and Esav. Sivan is Yaakov, I'm sorry. Yaakov and Esav were twins. The energy of Yaakov is Tiferet, blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure that I get that exactly. I might have to do it again, but I've heard it, Gemini, the oral Torah and the written Torah. There's lots of aspects of twins in the idea of Sivan, but I'll just read this again because so the first 3 months of the year, Nisan is Abraham, which is Chesed. Okay. Hashem took us out of Egypt, that's Chesed. Iyar is Gevurah, that's Yitzchak. Gevurah and judgment, that was the healing work of Iyar. And Sivan now is Yaakov, which is Tiferet. And Tiferet is always a balance, a balancing of opposite energies. So I guess that's the idea of twins, and Yaakov himself was a twin. So, okay. So that's some nice things about the month of Sivan is a perfect month for receiving the Torah. And just want to read the Hayom Yom, which is really additional teachings on Shavuot. So today, Wednesday was the 4th of Sivan. And the teaching here is Shavuot is an opportune time to achieve everything in improving Torah study and avoda marked by fear of Hashem, and also to strive in teshuva concerning Torah study without interference by the accusing Satan, just like the time of shofar sounding on Rosh Hashanah and the holy day of the fast of Yom Kippur. In other words, it's an 8 ratzon. An 8 ratzon is an auspicious time or a conducive time to work on something. And because of the holiness of the day, there isn't negative interference to prevent us from accomplishing what we want. So let's say on Rosh Hashanah, the Satan, because of the shofar blowing, the Satan is kind of silenced, and we can focus on proclaiming God King and getting into the headspace of our relationship with Hashem. That's on Rosh Hashanah. On Yom Kippur, the Satan is silenced because we're fasting, and our fasting is a form of tshuva, and we're doing all this tshuva, and the Satan doesn't have so much power on us on Yom Kippur because it's a day of forgiveness, and it's built into the calendar that it's a day of kapara, of forgiveness. So Satan has to take a walk. And then on Shavuos also, because it's this day of receiving the Torah, we have an opportune time to really work on our connection to Torah. So I don't know, it's hard to understand what that means. So I'm going to read a quote, which I thought is very nice, and then we can talk about it. So it says that on Shavuos, well, not only on Shavuos, but really I was already intimating this connection between creation and revelation, that they're both ongoing experiences. And in the creation of the world, when we, at the beginning of the Torah, it says, the Torah opens with Bereshit, bara Elokim et hashemayim ve'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Rashi says, actually, the word Bereshit doesn't just mean in the beginning. It also means bishvil reshit, for the sake of the Jewish people, Hashem created the world. So in a way, the whole creation is connected to the Jewish people getting Torah and having Torah. Another hint about that is that when Hashem creates the world, and it says, and this is the day 1, and this is day 2, and this is day 3, when it comes to the 6th day, it says, and the 6th day. It doesn't just say, and it was 6 days of it says the 6th day. And some of the commentators say that that's not the 6th day, is actually the 6th of Sivan, the date that the Torah was given. So there's this connection of the Torah being given and the creation of the world, and that all of creation was really for the sake of the Jewish people living and receiving Torah. So then, if that's the case, what do we do on Shavuos? So I'm going to read a quote, and I wrote it down word for word so we can talk about it. This responsibility and privilege is the inner teaching of Shavuot, that the creation of the world was for the sake of giving the Jewish people the Torah. This is the inner teaching of Shavuos. And each year on this day, we are bidden to look deeply into our own lives to determine how we can best merge our unique gifts and individual passions in life with the mission and destiny of the Jewish people for the good of the world. So, the point of creation was to give the Jewish people the Torah. On Shavuot, when we're celebrating receiving the Torah, the idea is to look to ourselves and say, well, so what does it say? To look deeply into our own lives to determine how we can best merge our unique gifts and individual passions in life with the mission and the destiny of the Jewish people, which was what? Receiving the Torah and somehow using that Torah for the good of the world. So what does that mean? And what does that mean to you? Does everybody understand the question? Is it complicated or is it simple? Simple or complicated?
Simple.
Okay, so number 1, the world was created for the sake of giving the Jewish people Torah. Okay, thank you. Hashem gave us the Torah. Question is, how are you using your individual gifts and your personality and your distinct uniqueness to better the world through that Torah?
Right.
Through learning it, or teaching it, or sharing it, or doing something.
Right.
So that's the
Well,
question.
that's what you're doing. That, like, your acts of kindness.
Acts
or
of kindness, good.
Acts of kindness.
Acts of kindness, that's a direct answer to the question. And you already said you've made your home open for Hachnasas Orchim. So that's, in a way, it says in the Torah, have guests in your house, treat the stranger like, so you're doing that. So let me hear more.
Teaching people
Teaching, sharing.
Torah
and
and
Torah. Yes.
Let's see. Obviously giving tzedakah.
Giving tzedakah is a huge one. Right? Helping the sick, the poor, the sick, the poor, the ailing, the whatever. So that's definitely something.
I mean, if I could just add in, especially because of what I do at my job, that's definitely the thing.
Yes.
Nobody saw what she looks like, but she's really.
Yes, taking care of the vulnerable. I mean, in other societies, if there were people that couldn't make it, they just, in the Sparta, I think they just left people out, in the wilderness if they couldn't, if they were not thriving. That's not, the Torah taught us compassion for the vulnerable. So for sure, Suri. So anyway, so on Shavuos, this is an opportune time to see how we can receive guidance of what is our particular path, and B, that particular path is somehow merging our creativity, our uniqueness with some way of, the Torah is not just to be an interesting topic in a book that we read, it's somehow to change ourselves. So, which brings me to the second Yom, which is the 5th day of Sivan, which is tomorrow, which is Erev. Well, actually, it's already tonight and tomorrow. So it says, when they gathered at the foot of the mountain, when they came out of Egypt, and the next thing they, gathering at the foot of they fought the Amalekites, and then they getting ready, they standing at the mountain, and they getting ready to receive the Torah. So there's a quote from the Torah: sanctify them today and tomorrow, and they shall cleanse their garments. That's kind of cute. So on the one hand, like mad rush to go to the laundry, like somehow wash our clothing right away before Hashem speaks to us. Sanctify them today and tomorrow is done from above, but they shall cleanse their garments. This they have to do for themselves. This was the teaching, that they have to cleanse the garments. This they have to do for themselves. The Tzemach Tzedek explained, sanctify them, that was done, said by God to Moshe, and the extension is the Moshe in every generation, and they are able to sanctify the today and the tomorrow, but cleanse their garments. The garments are of thought, speech, and action. This has to be done by each person on their own. So when they stood at Har Sinai and they all came and they all gathered around and they have to cleanse their garments, the idea is kind of get your thought and your speech and your action up to snuff.
Bracha, isn't it the idea that you want to be a pure receptacle, just purifying?
Yes, definitely. But I think that also the idea is how receiving the Torah can improve your thought, also, yes, I think what you're saying is completely.
But this specific part, just about cleansing your garments.
Yes.
Your body is the clothes for your neshama,
yes.
so.
Yes, your thought, your speech, and your action are the clothing of your neshama. Right. Okay, so there's a beautiful poem. There's a beautiful poem that I thought I would share with you. Chaya Lester is an interesting person. She lives in Yerushalayim. She writes poems. She's a very talented person.
And she spoke when I was on my trip in Israel. She was a leader and spoke.
Oh,
yeah.
She's also a very, very, very good therapist.
Yes. She's a therapist, and she's a poet, and she's a very creative person. So I'm going to read you something that she wrote, and then we'll all read together a poem that she wrote about Shavuos. So Shavuot celebrates the day we received the Torah upon Mount Sinai. Thus, one core theme of the holiday is Torah and revelation. It is a poignant image of revelation. In a poignant image of revelation, the Talmud in Nida teaches that each of us learns the entirety of the Torah while in the womb. There's a candle lit above our in vitro souls, and in the drench of that lamplight, an angel teaches us Torah. At our destined hour of birth, that same angel touches us above our lips, creating the gentle slope indention known in anatomical parlance as the philtrum. With that touch, we forget all that we have learned in our 9-month tutorial. Life sprawls out before us as an ongoing uncovering of all we have forgotten. Each piece of Torah learned is thus imbued with a striking sense of déjà vu, of resonance with the truth we have seemingly always known. Torah learning, according to the Talmud's model, is thus seen as more of a recovery or discovery than a revelation. The Talmud makes an implicit link between the external revelation at Mount Sinai and the more internal revelations of the womb. This link can be seen hinted at in a charming play of words, for the word for pregnancy, b'harayon, is reminiscent of bahar, the phrase meaning on the mountain. Mother's mountainous belly and Mount Sinai are thus parallel locals of highest revelation. And yet the Talmud's image of womb revelation evokes questions. Why do we forget the vast knowing locked away in our own souls? Why is life predicated on forgetfulness? And more importantly, how can we access the storehouse knowledge of our souls? So I think that's a very interesting question. And the indentation below each of our noses can be seen in this when we behold our fellow's face. Okay, so
Can you post it?
yeah, I'm gonna post the poem. The following poem is a prayer of an embryo in the womb. It is a prayer that shall be able to recall the Sinai lamp-like teachings of the womb, and more than just to remember, but also to find the ways to relate inherent knowing out into an insane world, so out of touch with forgotten truth. So I have the poem and I'm going to share my screen and we're going to look at it together. So here it is. I hope you can see it. So can you, I don't know if you can see it, but I'll read it and you'll try to follow on. It's not as big as but
I could see it, yeah.
touch me lightly 'neath the nose, that my lips may part in prose. Let me not forget you, though I fall into the world. Let luminescence last me still, and still my heart with seraph quill, if I fall too far to hear and memorize your notes. Send a script, a scrap of timber, a stub of finger, equipped with pencil. May my newborn have utensils to inherit as she grows. And I will write what I have learned here in this hollow, warm, and light-filled. So touch me slight that I may requite all that the angel quill inscribed upon my soul. And from this amniotic Sinai, I will find the voice to cry, the truth, though all the world would call it lies. And though I fall, so now I need to give you the next page. Here. And though I fall, insane, forgetful, slap my lips and snuff my candle, yet I will remember well the angel that taught me all I know. And marked thus with indentation, I will recall the revelation of this loom where God wove with love my soul. For Sinai stands indelible above our lips to tell of all that we forget as sure as we are born. So let us thus pursue your truths in déjà vu. Wrap us well in what we knew there in the womb. And Sinai will be as a mother enfolding us to rediscover the radiance lost in the rubble of the shattered tablets of your truth.
It's beautiful, very beautiful.
So
So you'll somehow post that? You'll be able to post that? Maybe we can read it at our,
Yeah,
Mhm. That's
I
actually a good idea.
I will post that onto the chat. And yeah, so this idea that the Torah, I can post it right now actually. The Torah is something that we know, that we got it, it's in us, and we remember it. And that revelation is more a remembering than a foreign idea. Like, what do you all think about that? I mean, it's a very beautiful poem, but what do you think of the idea?
As soon as you said it, I'm sorry to open up my mouth so much today, but since I'm not at work, I can concentrate. As soon as it's not funny. As soon as I heard you saying that, I was thinking, what about the people that aren't open to hearing Torah? Like we are, but what about the people who's walking down the street and somebody runs up to them and says, "Oh, da 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 da," and
I
they
don't believe
hear
in
it, and
God
they're
or
like,
something.
and they're like, "Leave me alone." Like I don't,
Okay, so that's a great
and it
question.
doesn't. Yeah,
So just by the way, I put the poem on the chat already.
thank you so much. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I think that's a great question. And I think that if everybody was walking around in touch with their souls, they would react to a lot of things differently in the world. But what happens is that every time a person gets hurt, or a person's betrayed, or a person has a negative experience, they start wrapping things around their essential soul, and they get more and more defended and more blocked from their own essence, which is soul. And so they could be walking down the street and you could come to them offering them, every delicacy available on the Torah table, and they're going to say, I'm not interested, because they've got blocked and they've got disconnected. That's why when we talk about tshuva, we don't say that the person doing tshuva has become a new person. We say that the person doing tshuva has to start unpeeling all of those blocks. And if you think about it, like each time something hurt you or someone disappointed you or whatever, you're wrapping, if you were a light bulb, it's my teacher in Neve was telling us, if you a light bulb and then they keep wrapping stuff around the light bulb, eventually the light's not giving out a lot of light because it's full of that wrapping. So you got to unwrap. So if a person's walking down the street, the Lubavitcher Rebbe said that you can walk up to any person and offer them an opportunity to light Shabbos candles if you're a woman, or put on tefillin if you're a man. Because even if they look disinterested, and even if they seem grouchy and grumpy, and even if they get angry, every single Jewish person really wants a connection. It's just buried underneath all this wrapping, but it's not so hard to touch it if a person comes with love and care and kindness. Somehow, Lubavitch have had a lot of success connecting people to their core neshama through doing a mitzvah. When you do a mitzvah, somehow magically certain things shed of that apparent disinterest. It's not a real disinterest, it's just apparent disinterest, because people are very wounded and guarded.
that's such a great answer.
It is.
Really, I felt bad that I asked, and
Yes, good.
That's
It's
your
always good to
answer.
ask your questions. So there's one little piece left. I don't know if you want to do it. It's just a little more details on Shavuos itself. Otherwise, we can wrap up.
Let's do it.
Do it.
Okay. So this is also from Melinda Ribner. She gives just a lot of sort of facts on the holiday, just as by way of summary.
The name of the book is again what?
I'm just going to go through some details about the
No,
holiday.
the name of the book again, the Ribner book.
Oh, the Kabbalah month by month.
Thank you.
Kabbalah, month by month. So the holiday of Shavuos has 4 names, right? The festival of reaping, because this was the reaping of the wheat. Shavuos is an agricultural holiday marking the end of the spring harvest. Then Shavuos is the day of the first fruits, the Bikurim, because on Shavuos, the first fruits were offered in the Holy Temple. We didn't talk about that really at all. Then Shavuos is called Festival of Weeks because we've been counting 7 weeks from Pesach to Shavuos. So that's the Festival of Weeks. And the Zohar, which is very interesting, the Zohar compares the 7 weeks in which the Omer is counted to the 7 days a woman counts after her monthly cycle. And just as the woman would go to the mikveh after counting these 7 days, and she would be reunited with her husband, so after these 7 weeks, we get reunited in a way with Hashem on the marriage night or the mikveh night or Shavuos. And then it's also called, Shavuos is called Zman Matan Toratenu, the time of the giving of our Torah. So, and then we don't have a specific day of when Shavuos usually falls out on the 6th of Sivan, but it doesn't say that in the Torah. It just says 7 weeks after Pesach. So, and that's that. And then she just recreates the scene as we've come out of Egypt and we've had the battle with the Amalekites, and we come to the foot of the mountain on the first day of Sivan, which is the new moon, Rosh Chodesh, which was Sunday.
Sunday, right?
And on the first day you rest. On the second day, Moshe, at Hashem's instruction, begins to prepare everyone for the upcoming big event. And we already said, and sorry, reiterated this cleaning of our clothes to make ourselves a vessel. So it's not take your shirt and tie it to the laundry, but it's clean up your thoughts, speech, and action. That's a good way of preparing. Moshe tells you and all those around you that you will be given the privilege of becoming a holy nation, a kingdom of Kohanim, priests, by following these commandments and mitzvot, that you will be given connecting you directly to Hashem, the entity, the being, the power who brought you out of Egypt. And you express your willingness to enter into this relationship and be part of this nation. And on the third day, Hashem tells you, do not go up to that mountain, do not ascend or touch it. Otherwise, there were very strict rules. Otherwise, you could die. And on the fourth day, abstain from all marital relations, cleanse your clothing again. And then Moshe goes up to the top of the mountain, and you are with the people who are at the bottom of the mountain. And then you, together with everyone else, are once again told not to go up the mountains. Very clear. Hashem makes it very clear that nobody goes on that mountain. And then the sounds from the Torah description that there was volcanic activity on Mount Sinai. The mountain was smoking and shuddering, and there was lightning and thunder. And yet Moshe ascends to receive the 10 commandments. So obviously, you know, we think about these things in graphic terms. So Moshe is going up the mountain, and there's some commentators that say, you know, it's an ascension of consciousness, this going up the mountain. Or is it Moshe literally going up the mountain? Well, we've been to Har Sinai. Some people have been in the Sinai and seen the mountains, and you know, probably a combination of both, that as Moshe is walking up the mountain, so his consciousness is ascending and ascending and ascending. I once read that Moshe had to be up there for 40 days and 40 nights because he almost had to dematerialize enough to be able to interact with God so that they could have this communication. And then he had to rematerialize to be able to come down and communicate with people. So that's an intense process. We knew he didn't drink, he didn't eat while he was up there, but this idea of he literally had to transform himself into a being of a different frequency or vibration, or like remove himself from his physicality to such an extent that he could have this interaction with Hashem. Hashem could communicate all this information to him, and then he rematerialized his body, so to speak, to come down. And then there's an ongoing debate about exactly what the people heard and what they experienced on that day. Some say, and these are all different opinions, that that the people fainted upon hearing God's voice and had to be revived 10 times, once after the recitation of each commandment. And the fainting represents the realization that God is the true power, the true existence of the world, and that people do not have any real existence on their own. People cannot stand and do not, in truth, ever stand on their own. This idea of hearing God's voice, like, did they hear God's voice as a loud, sound, a voice? There's even conversation and debate about that. There's one explanation that everybody heard God's voice as the sound of their own parent, the sound of their own father. They didn't hear a foreign voice. They heard a voice that they knew and were familiar with. So that's very interesting.
But then they wouldn't be so traumatized by it, but whatever, I should keep my mouth shut.
I don't think
But that's a good point, though.
I don't think you should keep your mouth shut.
Really?
No, you're just trying to get through the list.
No, it's not about just getting the list. I think first of all, there's different opinions, but if the voice was kind of booming very loud is one opinion, or they heard it inside their own consciousness is another opinion. But on the other hand, was it traumatizing? Did they faint? I think these are all different renditions of what happened. I'm not sure if all the stories incorporate all the details, all the opinions. So maybe
I also thought, Baruch, that it was after the first 2 that they passed out, that they didn't hear it directly from Hashem anymore because it was too much for them.
Right. The Gemara, the commentary on the Torah says that God actually placed the mountain on top of the Jewish people, forcing them to accept the Torah. So,
why would they have to be forced if they knew already this was coming? And, and Hashem went and asked all the other nations and they didn't want to accept it, except for us, and so why did they have to be, they were planning on accepting it. Why did they have to be forced?
She quotes her teacher, Reb Shlomo Kalbach, and she said, Reb Shlomo answered this as, do I really have a choice if I'm going to keep Shabbos? Do I really have a choice if I'm going to love my child? Of course I'm going to. That it wasn't a forcing as in a pressure. It was like, it's so clear to me that I have nothing else to, I'm not going to answer I'm not going to say no to this.
Maybe like you need a little nudge because you know that it's a lot of responsibility. Come on, you can do it.
Or it's not even a nudge. It's just so evident that you have no thought to say no. It's just more than a nudge. It's like in your face and you just say yes. I'm just going to read a little bit more of these different opinions because it's a little confusing, but I guess it's interesting as well. Other commentaries like those of the Ramban and Rashi say that the 10 commandments were given in a moment, everything given instantaneously, but the people could not comprehend that. So after the first commandments were repeated to them, they asked Moshe to be the intermediary. This is like what Suri said, because they were not able to bear the intense holiness and power of the transmission. The people, upon seeing the flame and the smoke and hearing the thunder around the mountain, said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will hear. let Hashem not speak to us and we should die. And this becomes the idea that they had trust in Moshe and asked him to give it over to them. Here. She says, I remember Reb Shlomo was saying in the name of some Hasidic Rebbe that the Jews did not actually hear anything. So I remember that I taught in this class that what did the Yidden hear, and did they hear just the word Anochi, I am the God that brought you out of Egypt? Did they just hear the Aleph, which is a silent sound, Aleph, right? So she said she heard in the name of Reb Shlomo quoting a Hasidic Rebbe that the Jews actually didn't hear anything. It was pure silence, the silence of the Aleph, the first letter of the 10 Commandments, and even this was too much for them. The Gemara says the Torah was given to the Jewish people, but the whole world was invited. The souls of many belonging to other nations were also present and also received the Torah at Sinai. Many of these people feel a strong attachment to the Jewish people, and many of them chose to convert later and become Jews. So anyway, I think that's a lot of food for thought. The idea that we're hearing something from the outside, and then the other idea that actually we're hearing it from the inside, that they didn't hear anything at all, that it's the listening to the silence. And then the Chaya Lester poem of everything was told and taught to us, and we have it within, and it's about kind of reconnecting to something inherently that is known. And the idea of doing tshuva, going back to our authentic reality and trying to listen and connect to that, and that Shavuos is an opportune time for us to do all of that, to connect to our connection to Torah, and then to ask ourselves and to figure out how we can make it new in this new year, because Shavuos is a re-receiving of the Torah and a new invitation to be involved in a new way, because the Torah is constantly being given and constantly the world's constantly being created. And how do we be creative with that and give forth something fresh and something new? So that's the deal. So
Wow.
yeah, so good luck with your experience of Shavuos. And
Thank
of
you.
course, the idea of eating cheesecake, they were getting the Torah, and they, needed their
Mhm.
vessels to be koshered because they were
Right, because they weren't.
kosher, and so they couldn't
Mhm.
eat meat. So we eat cheese, right? So the mitzvah, the minhag of
Mhm.
cheese, not the mitzvah, but the minhag.
Can I
Anyway,
tell
all of your beautiful Montif. Any questions?
Thank
or
you,
comments?
Bracha.
Thank you. Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yakova said
Wait,
she was
Jenny
gonna ask
Yaakov
a
wants to say
question.
something.
Oh, can I tell a bittersweet
Sure.
Shavuos thing? Several years ago, I was at a table, like for one of the meals on Shavuos, and I just asked the question, why is it in the secular world, among secular Jews, you hardly hear anything about Shavuos? Like you hear about Hanukkah, you hear about Purim,
Mhm.
Pesach, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, etc. But you don't hear so much about Shavuos if you grow up not religious,
Mhm.
Yeah.
This
never
That's
guy
believed
true.
it.
You're right.
this guy said, well, if you don't really believe there's a God and that God gave us the Torah and that the Torah is godly, then why would you celebrate it?
Well, I mean,
Very sad, but true.
people
This guy
don't-
was, by the way, a frum guy who believes in Hashem and believes in the Torah and loves Shavuos.
Of
He
course.
was
And I
just,
think
yeah.
Linda has a response. Linda, what
Yeah,
do you want to
because
say?
secular people, the knowledge just isn't handed down. I never heard of it.
Right.
Mhm. That's what I think
because
more.
I didn't
Yeah.
have a religious family at all, and I don't know, it's just, I don't even remember it really being talked about. Well, because in the summer, we didn't really go to temple
Mhm.
during the school year. It's just a matter of not knowing.
She's
Yeah.
right. I didn't know about it till I got
Yeah.
even after 6th grade in yeshiva. I didn't even know about it till like 7th like a year or two after yeshiva, when I first like
Wow.
really,
A year or two ago.
Wow.
a year or two ago, okay.
About six.
But I
six,
also, but I
7 years
didn't know
ago.
about it either. I had, I was clueless.
Well, the good
Yeah,
news
we
is we
can
know
do it.
about it now.
Yes,
Mhm,
indeed. Yes,
exactly.
indeed. Yes, indeed.
Also, because there's no physical manifestation specifically.
Right.
Like Sukkot, there's a sukkah, right? I don't have to go through it.
Mhm.
Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, there isn't, but I think
Everybody
that's what
knows
I'm
about
thinking.
it.
No,
Mhm.
Rosh
Right.
Hashanah, there's the shofar and
Oh,
Yom
right,
Kippur is
right.
the fasting.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
so the big mitzvah
that we
for
all knew.
Shavuos, by the way, the big mitzvah is to be in shul on Friday morning to hear the 10 Commandments. Even if you don't go to shul the whole time, to be in shul on Friday morning when they're reading the Torah, and it's like you standing at Har Sinai getting the Torah all over again. And I know the Rebbe made a big effort that everyone should be in shul, men, women, children, even infants should be
Mhm,
in shul to hear the giving of.
mhm.
So,
Yeah,
all right.
exactly. Amen. Yep.
Have a
Thank you,
beautiful
Bracha.
Shavuos.
Thank you, Bracha. It was fantastic.
Thank
As
you.
always.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Bracha.
you,
Thank you so
everyone.
much. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Everyone have a great holiday.
Beautiful Yontif.
Yes.
Good
Beautiful
Shabbos,
Yontif.
together.
Sameach.
Yeah.
Even if
Enjoy.
you drive